Hello, happy holidays and happy new year coming up to everybody. It's Adrian here from Sofeast and Renaud is with me as well. Hi, Renaud.
Hey, Adrian. Hey, everybody. And yes, this will come out in the holiday season. So we hope that the listeners are having a good time, or if they're listening to it after the holidays, that they had a good, nice, refreshing break and so on.
So we've come to the end of, it's been a long year, Renaud.
Yes. A lot of stuff happened. So maybe we were thinking of doing is first, let's go through, what happened this year in the economy, geopolitics, and so on, like in the way that impacts manufacturers and importers of Chinese products, and then talk a little bit of about what happened in our company this past year, and then we'll have a quick look over the best podcasts of this year. Let's do that.
Sounds perfect. Yeah. So if we get started with on the news side of things that have been going on in the world that have been affecting all of us in different ways, I guess. I suppose the obvious topic to start on, and no one's going to be surprised with this, is COVID.
Right. So what's happened if we look at 2022 is that the start of the year, firmly in COVID zero or dynamic zero COVID or whatever, saying, okay, it's fine to have a few cases, but let's be very, very strict and adapt and let's do it in a smart way, in a scientific way, and so on. So the problem is that they've been battling Omicron, which is, if I'm not mistaken, is the most contagious variant of COVID-19, right? And some people say it from the beginning, forget it. The country just can't, or it's got to be like North Korea, really shoot people who come in, be completely closed, have no connections to anything, and watch your borders very carefully, right? But a country like China is not going to win that battle, but they tried hard. They kept everything together until the Congress, but like a couple of weeks after the Congress, which was late October, I think, yes. Mid or late October, in November already, it was getting clear, it's out of hand. A lot of cases in Beijing, a lot of cases in Guangzhou, a lot of cases in Zhengzhou. I mean, it's out of the box. You can't put it in the box. And then there were these protests in a number of countries and so on. Number of cities.
Yeah.
And then, people in Beijing just said, whatever, okay, let's open, and they changed the narrative completely from this is a very dangerous virus to, hey, now actually, based on the data, it's not deadly, or much less deadly than before. So now is a good time. Actually, no. Now is the worst time. It's December. It's cold. People are inside. It's together with flu and cold. There's Chinese New Year coming, so the migrants are getting scared. They go back to their hometowns. Of course. They're carrying the virus everywhere, So from Beijing's perspective, it's simple. Hey, let's just stop testing. They removed all the local neighborhood testing stations. Let's stop counting. Whatever. Let's not really publish the numbers. And and that's it. And let's try to coordinate so the local governments know what to do and so on. And there was a lot of confusion for about a week, and then people kind of got, okay, that's the message, that's what happens. Okay, now in some provinces it's clear that even if you have infected staff but they can still work, you can keep going with them, working in the factory. right?
Yeah, it's quite a U-turn, isn't it?
Oh yeah, could not imagine that. Like 2 months before or 1 month before, could not imagine.
No.
And of course, it's a problem for auditors and inspectors and consultants and so on. People who have to visit the different factories because they might get in contact with all these sick people and they're gonna they get sick. I mean, this is what's happening already, right? Very fast, everybody gets sick. So it is the first, not the first wave, but the first nationwide wave. And well, it's messy, but it was extremely messy in pretty much every other country where it happened. For those that went into that kind of trouble in 2020, it was terrible. So, they kind of doing like your country, like the UK, just whatever, just like the flu, let it rip through. It's fine, right?
In the UK, we had lockdowns. I mean, we were in the house for months, and this is when we started the podcast. Right, one of the reasons that we started it was because COVID was going on, and we had all the lockdowns, and we wanted to find a platform to put information out, not only about COVID, of course, usually not, but. And that was great because I was just in the house podcasting away with you or with with other guests. But we were under lockdown for a long time, and then all of a sudden they did lift it, and it was like China. And I think I wonder if, like, the situation in China, was it the protests that really caused this? Because you mentioned it's December, it's the worst time for this, but
it was out of control. Clearly,
I think they saw the writing was on the wall with Omicron, and so it was better to say, okay, we're going to release it now, and it sort of takes a little bit of the responsibility away from the authorities, because then they can't say, oh well, zero COVID failed.
Yeah, okay. People got tired of it. Some people complained, and then the government listened, and reacted. Well, actually, they were probably asking themselves, what do we do now? Because there were thousands of cases already, and it was really, the tiger was out of the cage. I mean, it was too late. So anyway, that's COVID. Big mess for a lot of manufacturing companies, obviously, with a lot of, we've been impacted pretty bad. A lot of key people, down or functioning maybe 1/3 of the usual productivity for a while. Half of the project managers get sick, even though most were working from home, but then they get infected by their family members, they get infected by everybody, right? The inspection team working on a slower pace. Anyway, we send messages to the clients who depend on our work. Fortunately, productions when it comes to manufacturing in Agilian, there's some POs that have to be shipped out by Chinese New Year, but there's a few customers, and we keep them updated about what happens, and so far no big disaster, so it's fine. That's good. Cross finger, right? So that's COVID. That's one thing. The other big thing that was a big problem last year when we did the same kind of podcast at the same time of the year was logistics and the costs and the lack of availability. Well, that's pretty much completely gone. There's too many containers around. I mean, I saw that. Where is it, in New Mexico or one of the border states in the U.S.? The authorities are using some containers, piling them up, sort of forming a wall with just along the border. I mean, kind of weird. But that I saw that, I was like, what? Okay, some other places are going to use them probably to make cheap student housing and so on.
At the World Cup, they used it for accommodation containers.
Yeah. So
thousands of dollars it was costing people to stay in a container with no air conditioning. Nice.
Ouch. Yeah. So anyway, more climate friendly than doing the daily trip from from Dubai, where they stay in a hotel, right? I mean, that World Cup was just a disaster for that. So that's the big good news of 2022. Things have get back to normal. Now, talking about logistics in the next few weeks in the Pearl River Delta around Shenzhen, Dongguan, Guangzhou, Foshan, Zhongshan, there's a little bit of an issue with the feeders that take the containers and bring them to the ports. I saw a lot of warnings that they would stop functioning and things like that. So it might have no impact. Maybe I'm just going to put it on a truck, bring it to the Shenzhen port or Hong Kong port. Maybe they're going to find other ways. I don't know. Let's see. This COVID situation might still have an impact. But
we saw how it impacted the Shenzhen port, and it's one of the biggest container ports in the world, and they'd had like just 1 or 2 cases and shut half of it down, which was crazy. But that's not going to happen now, of course. But if staff simply are off for a little bit because they're not feeling very well, then it still has a similar effect, right? Yeah.
Now let's watch for what other countries are going to do in reaction to the situation in China. I mean, I saw an article about India, where they say, well, all these Chinese cases is going to get back into our face and infect us, right? So everybody use the mask more often, and so on and so forth. Let's see. No clue what's really going to happen. So COVID, we talked about the logistics. 2022, obviously, invasion of Ukraine, big problems, especially for Europe. Electricity, energy in general is very expensive, and so on. Companies that were relocating production to places like Ukraine and some other, Bulgaria, Romania, and so on, have been impacted. A lot of people see a lot more risk than they were seeing before. But really, it also came back to China and what people call the China contingency, the Taiwan contingency, is scaring them. Putin did that to Ukraine, and he got ostracized, and there's a lot of sanctions and things like that. What's going to happen if China invades Taiwan? It seems like the current first secretary of the party has a mandate to bring Taiwan back to the Middle Kingdom, back to the family, as they say. Let's see. But a lot of people are scared. We never know. I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. It would
hopefully not.
Yeah, I think it's pretty obvious. It's very high risk, but who knows? I
think the Western media makes out it's almost as if they've said in China, we're going to go to war to take back Taiwan, but they haven't actually said that. They didn't say it. They said they want to bring it back to China, however possible.
Yeah, we don't exclude violence. That's what they say. Yeah. And then everybody say, okay, well, they're preparing an invasion, and look at what they do with the fighter planes and the bombers going all around and stuff, and look at what they're doing when Pelosi is visiting and so on, right? So it scared people pretty bad, and yes, the prism of the Western media is definitely helping people think that way. And now a lot of companies, because they rely heavily on China, they see that their valuation, maybe the big companies on the stock market, their valuation is lower because of the China risk, right? And who knows, maybe in a few years it's going to be considered like the vice businesses, tobacco and oil and things like that. Oh, you have a lot of stuff going on in China? Well, boom, you're in that list, the non-virtuous kind of companies. Hey, it's definitely going in that direction. If you look at the stock market and the analysts and so on. So let's see if Beijing makes some effort to get back into the how to say, the good graces of the Western community? Let's see. This is a big question mark, and that leads us to the trade war and tech war with the USA. Definitely a tech, maybe not war, but like starvation.
Yes.
Isolation. Let's say this is clear. They're especially fixated on the cutting edge microprocessors. May not make sense, but that's what the USA are really fixated on, because it can be used to maybe for military purposes. It can be used for a variety of things, maybe for artificial intelligence and things like that. So they trying to restrict what mainland China has access to, and at the same time they're working closely with Taiwan, probably pressuring them to the point where TSMC is investing in I'm not sure if it's cutting edge, bleeding edge, but like pretty close to bleeding edge microprocessor manufacturing facilities in the southwest of the US. And Intel is doing that, and the world is going to swim in an ocean of cheap microprocessors, maybe. Let's see. But that does look like a lot of extra capacity in 3 or 4 years' time. Let's see. But again, that's a welcome change from the situation last year and this year, where a lot of electronic components in general, not just MPUs and MCUs, but a lot of electronic active components were in short supply. On the trade war side, the tariffs are not going away. I think that's pretty clear. They were actually talking about, let's look at other ways. Maybe they may not add any tariffs, but they're looking at other ways to hurt China, especially the new majority in the U.S. Congress. So let's see what comes out of that. The UFLPA, which is the act against forced labor, including some people from a certain minority in Western China that is not treated very nicely all the time, let's say. This is definitely showing its teeth. A lot of containers are blocked, especially solar panels.
Yeah.
So, this is politics before anything else.
That ties into what you were just talking about how Chinese products, made in China products, are becoming almost, sort of like forbidden or whatever. If they've got links to that area, then that's absolutely the case, at least in the States. Yeah,
right. So that Forced Labor Act is definitely showing its teeth, I was saying. Inflation Reduction Act, at the same time, is pushing for the relocation of the manufacturing of solar panels and wind turbines and so on in the USA. But at the same time, they block thousands of containers of solar panels that they're not going to use. Anyway, we'll see. I have no idea if once they've done these investments and companies are really restarting to make photovoltaic panels and things like that in the US, if the price difference with China, not only the price difference, but the capacity, manufacturing capacity, and the breadth of offer of the kinds of models and features and so on, really makes it interesting, or if they're just going to be trampled like they were 10 years ago. Because there used to be an industry, in the US, in Germany and so on, and they just got crushed. So let's see. I'm a bit skeptical on that, but we'll see.
On that, you did recently speak to a couple of authors of a book, Enterprise China,
right.
Doctors Morrison and Black, and
yes.
To be fair, the links between the competing with China and high tech products and industry that's absolutely an issue that is going to keep going on into 2023. But they did say that if you are producing, relatively standard consumer products, there's less need to be worried about producing them in China these days.
The risk is much lower. Absolutely. I think it was a pretty smart and balanced sort of approach. And how technologically advanced and unique your products are does play, a role, and also especially how strategic they are seen by any country does play a big role in the risk of having them made in China. Right. So that was an interesting interview on this podcast. I don't know, about a month ago.
Yeah, start of December.
So we talked about the frictions between the USA and China. Obviously, it's not just the USA. Looking at Canada, looking at Australia, looking at UK, also more and more of continental Europe, except maybe for the Germans, or I should say, except maybe for the coalition in power in Germany, because a lot of people in Germany are actually thinking in different terms about China. But they are seeing China, as a rival, as a source of risk, as a threat, as a source of disruption. Again, with the Taiwan contingency scaring everybody, and this has been brewing for years and years and years. So the trend is not reversing. I'm not sure it's accelerating, even though it might have accelerated this year, with the Ukraine invasion. So there is still the same problem of increasing friction at a political level and also at the public opinion level, right? Can you feel it a little bit in the UK? Do people, I don't know, badmouth, this is made in China and so on, more and more, and you're supporting that government and that? We get some comments sometimes.
Maybe not made in China products, because they're so ubiquitous. Like everything is made in China, so it's quite hard not to get stuff that's made in China. And I think there's more of an appreciation that you actually can get good quality products from China as well. And I mean, the days are long gone since China was just known for, cheap plastic stuff that breaks straight away. I'm sitting in front of a MacBook, for example, and that's made in China. That's not a low quality product. So I think from a manufacturing point of view, I don't necessarily think people just look down on Chinese products exactly. But I think politically, I see a lot more negativity towards China in the UK press. How warranted it is, I don't know, because I'm quite conscious that the press in most countries is a form of propaganda. I'm not 100% China can never be wrong and I love everything about China kind of person. I mean, I was in China for a long time. My wife's Chinese, and there's a lot of things about China that I really love, but I will call them out if I think they're not doing things right. But I think the more disrupted that countries in the West get politically, and the more dissatisfied their population gets, I think the easier it is to start banging on the drum of, we've got a bogeyman. Look at nasty China. Look at what they're doing. And obviously Russia is an obvious candidate. And indeed that is warranted if you see what they're doing in Ukraine. But China haven't invaded Taiwan. China aren't, as far as we know, supporting Russia in military terms, which is definitely a good thing. They also speak out against the war and say you should be solving things diplomatically. They have ties with Russia, that's fine, but so do India, so do a lot of countries, and we don't talk about India in those terms necessarily. So I think the press do try to make China a bogeyman for sure. I would be careful about reading too much into it. That's my opinion.
Okay. And the last major trend that I wanted to mention is all of these companies that manufacture products in China, Chinese-owned companies. Well, they've been expanding for years, right? Especially to Southeast Asia, because they can find Chinese speakers, they can find local Chinese there who can help them find their way around. So, I mean, if you go to to Cambodia, if you go to some places in Vietnam, wow, it's, or Myanmar, it's full of Chinese companies, right? Thailand, some, and I think it's going to be more and more also. So, Thailand is fewer because obviously the labor, the wages are higher than Cambodia, for example. And also, well, Chinese people don't feel that Thai people are very hard workers for manufacturing jobs. So yeah, it's less impacted than the others. And increasingly we'll see Mexico. There's an industrial park in Monterrey that has a lot of Chinese investment, it seems, and in the next 3 to 5 years, I think we're going to see much more of that. So what happens, and also Eastern Europe and so on, certainly. So here's the way I see it. A lot of companies in the West, they buy from China. They are used to the Chinese model, and they built their business on the Chinese model, where they can go to the Canton Fair or Alibaba or whatever and say, oh, this product is nice. I know where I can sell it. I have a brand. I have a special packaging. I wanted it that color, maybe. I'm just going to distribute it, just resell it. I don't want to pay for any kind of development. I don't want to pay for the injection mold. I don't want to pay for anything, right? And I go to Ningbo, I go to Dongguan, I go into a showroom and I have 50 different types of toasters or coffee machines. You get my point, right? Or handbags, 200 styles of handbags, or 200 styles of bra, underwear, And I say, okay, I like this one, I like this one, I like this one, In places like Turkey, like Poland, like Mexico, it just doesn't work that way. Or domestically in the US or Germany, or, you can find relatively cheap products, a wide variety of relatively cheap products available to be rebranded and just distributed, right?
Yeah.
You got to get much more involved in the development process, or maybe you also need to be much more involved in the manufacturing process. China, you go there and they make it a turnkey solution. It's easy, it's fast, it is low visibility, it is high risk, but these companies have built their business model on that. They're used to it and they want to keep going. And what are they going to do? Well, they'll still be working with the same people in Shanghai or in Guangzhou, but the production, instead of being in Ningbo, it's going to be in Ho Chi Minh City, or it's going to be in somewhere in the Czech Republic or somewhere in Mexico, right? That is the future for ODM products, I think. And a lot of Chinese companies are very eager to do that because it's a way for them to diversify their holdings, their investment, to put some money outside of China legally, so that maybe their kids can live in that other country or whatever outside of China and have all kinds of activities going on there and have a good life.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me that they're not going to stand still. We know that. Okay, so we've covered a lot of the key sort of news stories, the things that have been affecting probably many of our listeners, if not all, in some ways, this year. If we move on then to talking about more internally, so the Sofeast Group, what are some of the things that it's worth reminding everybody that we've been up to this year, Renaud?
So, quickly, a few highlights of the year. So we now have a separate area for a testing lab in Dongguan. And it's going to be a separate website also and things like that. I mean, the team has been helping put that together, and we are structuring things in the background so that a lot of things are standardized and so on, as it should be for testing lab. But at the same time, it comes with a lot of advice and engineering work and so on. So what we've seen is that maybe for every $5 or $6 of testing, people pay maybe $1 of engineering work, and this is much more than the run-of-the-mill kind of compliance testing lab, because it's mostly performance, reliability, safety, let's say. And some of that can be used, obviously, for compliance, and we're going in that direction. But that's really where we're starting. And it's really mostly geared at companies that develop their own products, electromechanical products, right? So that's really the focus of that lab. Another one is a pretty nice, pretty extensive renovation at Agilian, and a move to a new large space, and it's pretty nice. It really has a nice feel, and you've also seen a lot of the photos and videos and so on. There's it's a large area for general training and quick updates to everybody. They can just come in. There's little mezzanine kind of effect for some of the office, because the ceiling is pretty high. I mean, it's pretty nice. That's what we were planning for a few years. The team in India has taken off. We now have, let me see, six people. So the team is getting comfortable on how to work together and so on. So it's nice, and we have some other openings, and that's pretty important in our long-term plan. On the Agilian side, development, NPI, DFM, manufacturing, all of that has been going strong, extremely busy the whole year, pretty much. I was looking at some of the products that we were manufacturing recently. There are some bike and motorcycle accessories for safety and so on, for visibility, etc. Various kinds of wearable products. And also there's some products that are a little bit close to medical devices without having any claim or anything, pretty, but how to say, for well-being, for whatever, treatment of the skin and this and that. I can't go into the details of what product and so on, but this is what the team's been working on a lot. And then, we wanted to go over the list of the best podcasts of 2022 in order of downloads. So let me see. First, the number one download was me talking with Andrew Huppert, who is in Mexico. Is it time for North American importers to leave China? So this obviously led to some discussions and so on. And another one is how to develop your Chinese suppliers, right? So this was part of the series of podcast episodes about sourcing from China, but really how to take your Chinese suppliers and actually have them and push them to improve.
We also have the ebook's not that recent, but we do have an ebook that you wrote, which is actually really, I think it's like 80 odd pages about developing Chinese suppliers as well. So I mean, this is always something that people are interested about. Yeah,
about buying in China in general, and then developing suppliers was one of the chapters, right?
Yeah.
Podcast number 3 was about the levels of quality standard, how to document your quality standard. Number 4 was an effective QA program for new electronic products. So we went into what it takes to actually reduce risk, right? When you're developing and manufacturing a new electronic product. After that was an overview of Design for X with our colleague Andrew, who's been on this podcast a few times. So Design for X is design for quality, design for manufacturing, design for reliability, design for basically how designers can take into account all kinds of requirements.
Yeah, that's a good one.
at the design stage. So it's pretty important, actually. The next one is also featuring Andrew. The one must do before mass producing your new product. Is Andrew's pretty good at explaining all the ways to validate the product design and the process design. Yeah, basically before hitting the green button and going into mass production.
If you've ever seen the Agilian technology blog, Andrew often blogs on there, and he does cover topics like that in quite some detail. So if you want to hear more from Andrew about those, it's kind of like the nuts and bolts of manufacturing, and very much see it as a focus on reliability as well. The Agilian technology blog, which is Agilian is our contract manufacturing subsidiary. Definitely check it out. I'll put the link in the show notes.
Right. Another one was about the business model, Chinese style versus Western style for manufacturing. So people, when they start buying from China, this is not very clear to them. So it's very good for opening their eyes on what it means to work, Chinese style versus Western style. If we simplify things a bit. And then after that was also with Andrew about the risks you face when skipping new product introduction and some of the steps of new product introduction, right? And so this was those that had the highest number of downloads. I just wanted to point out to a few others that are pretty good. So one was an interview of Professor O'Connor. This was maybe a month and a half ago.
Yeah, November maybe. Yeah.
Factory audits equal better suppliers equal better quality products, based on data analysis, based on significant relationships between various data Professor O'Connor could analyze. So this was quite interesting. And quite good also for us to confirm, you should do a factory audit before starting to work with a supplier, because if they get a better score, it's really linked to their ability to make better products. There's a higher probability that productions will be better. This is clearly demonstrated here in his data. Another one is about calculating the cash needed to prototype and launch a new product, again with a focus on electromechanical products in general. Because a lot of people don't really know how to put all of that in a spreadsheet, and they don't know where to start. So we try to cover the big topics here. And the last one was with Liz Long, who is a consultant helping companies make the first few steps and to launch their new product. She's in the US. And it was simply how to start developing your new product, right? So it was a good, nice overview, good tips, solid advice from Liz. And that's it. Obviously, a lot of content published, and that's a lot of your work, Adrian. So good job on that.
Thank you. Yeah, guilty as charged.
And recently we're still publishing them as we're going, but we are most of the way through an in-depth series of articles on the types of plastics. It's pretty much only thermoplastics here.
Yes.
To pick for various kinds of products, for enclosures, for optical, whatever. There's a lot of things, and we'll transform some of that into videos also. Anything else to add to that?
If I may, yes. In terms of content as well, you mentioned that we've been creating some in-depth articles about, selecting the right type of plastic for your needs. That's with Paul Adams, one of our senior engineers. You might have seen Paul in videos and on the podcast and whatever. So also, we have been focusing quite a lot, haven't we, Renaud, on environmental impacts of products. So we've created a lot of content about eco certifications, life cycle analysis, like the EU eco design regulation, which is coming in Europe, but I mean, it's going to be happening in different forms around the world. And this is, it's happening now. This is starting in 2023, and it's becoming law, eco-design at least, in 2024, right? Or it's becoming mandatory by 2024.
Yeah, mandatory 2024.
So we're getting asked a lot more about this topic, and even if we're not, people need to know a lot more about it as well. Those that aren't asking yet. So we've got quite a pool of information about that on Sofeast as well, in different forms here on the podcast as well.
Absolutely.
And one thing I did a lot of this year as well with some of our colleagues in India, they did some research on different types of suppliers in India for different product categories, because people say, well, I can get it in China, but can I really get it in India? Well, the answer is yes, in many cases. And so we created a whole bunch of lists of potential suppliers for, things like LED lighting or jewelry even in India. And those were well received as well. And it shows that there is life beyond China. So thanks to our Indian colleagues for helping me out with that as well.
Yep. A lot of good content this year, and I will try to keep it up in the coming years.
Yeah, of course. So it's a good old review of the year there, Renaud. I think the last thing for us to do once again is to wish everybody a very happy new year.
Right. Yeah. Don't eat too much. Don't drink too much. Be safe, but have fun.
Absolutely. And we will see you on the other side as we go into the start of January 2023.
Exactly. See you there.
Thanks again for listening to this podcast brought to you by the Sofeast Group. We're on a mission to provide you with everything you need to manufacture effectively in Asia, including inspections, auditing, new product development support, contract manufacturing, 3PL warehousing and fulfillment, and much more across Asia's key manufacturing areas. Visit us at sofeast.com, that's SOFEAST.com, to learn more and get help. If you've enjoyed the podcast today, please do rate, review and share, because it will really help others discover us too.